Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Eye on Politics, this 19th day of March 2018. My name is Samuel Njoroge. It's Monday, it's chilly, it's cold, but we thank God that we are alive and well. So are my resident panelists with me in studio. Extreme left, I've got James Mamboleo. How are you, sir?
Very fine, thank you, sir.
Everything is okay?
Good.
Good morning
Your
to you
weekend was
too.
good?
And I've got Milly Lwanga right here to my immediate left. How are you?
I'm fine.
Everything okay?
As good as the rain.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm so glad to see that you were never drowned or went with the rain. No. Yeah, but welcome to this edition of Eye on Politics. We found ourselves last week ending the show discussing the pact, and that was the handshake between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. A lot has developed, and key among the developments was the Deputy President telling MPs and Kenyans not to concentrate too much on 2022 succession, but to look into politics. That would be the right political statement to make. But the political reality is that 2022 succession is nowhere, or is going away, or is not going anywhere anytime soon. So, in relation to what we've been witnessing currently, to what effect is the pact likely to impact 2022 succession? Let's begin this conversation from that note. Ladies first.
I think that, yes, the pact and the damper that it presented to the political scenario, because it shocked people, and Kenyans were left wondering what next, what does it mean? And I think that key amongst the reactions to watch was the reaction of politicians, particularly the lead politicians. And you cannot say, like you've said, that 2022 can be taken off the table, because 2022 began in 2015. Even the 2017 elections was about 2022. We remember, for example, when the Jubilee primaries were being conducted, everyone was saying that people allied to the deputy president were the ones who were coming in, and those who had opposed him were being left out in the cold, and there was a deliberate agenda to build a strong Jubilee base that was going to support him. So we already saw that even from 2017 general elections. I think that now we are now talking more not about who are going to be the men around the presidential candidate come 2022, but who is going to be the key man as the presidential candidate. And from the lead politicians that you see who have been so far pinpointed as potential candidates, well, definitely the deputy president is ahead of the pack. His reaction shows maturity in politics. Maturity in politics implies what Kenyans think is what we call kigeugeu, means that you must realize what is beneficial to you and to your people now. What agenda are you able to sell now and move with it? When is the right time for you to accept certain things and sail or roll with it? And when must you talk very loudly? And out of all the contenders, whether real or pretend for the throne, you find that the deputy president is the one who's been behaving presidential right from the start. There was all this talk because Kenyans don't lack room to have innuendos and plots and secrets. So there was all this discussion about whether he was actually involved in the initial discussions behind the pact and whether he was for it. And in the midst of all that discussion, he was still coming out as, this is a moment we are talking Kenya. We are not talking politics, we are talking Kenya. And he was right there, trying to remind people that Kenya is greater than us all. For those who may remember the late Saitoti's words, there comes a time, you know. He was almost taking the there comes a time moment, whereas the other pretend or real whatever's to the throne were behaving differently. They did not realize the political maturity of the moment, where Kenyans wanted politicians who, whether real or not, would be able to portray a picture that their interest lies with the interests of the people and not just about pacts, because we have definitely moved from that agenda where Kenyans used to believe very strongly that giving a position or a seat to one person is very good for the entire community. There's still that need to feel that the community is represented at that level, but that is not the key driving factor. So it's important for politicians to show people that we are bringing everybody and we are working with everybody for the general good. And as we are all working together, there is this respect for our position. So there was clear indication from those who were still crying, so to speak, and feeling left out because they did not see the seat. Yet there were no seats that Kenyans were seeing. Kenyans were trying to unpack what is the meaning of this pact. We are told that there'll be a secretariat set up, and I think we need to talk about that secretariat and what it implies later on. And yet, these people, when we are still trying to understand what it means for the nation, because we are told it's for the nation, they are crying that they have been left out, meaning that we have not had our turn to kula the nyama, you know, in cahoots with everybody else. So the only person who seemed to be moving or swaying with the punches was Honorable Ruto, who said that it is a Kenyan moment, and let's make it a Kenyan moment. And at the end of the day, when Kenyans are thinking, because a politician or a president will never be, or is unlikely to be a minister, I mean a church minister or priest, it will be a politician. When you're looking for a politician who can embrace the wider interests, put aside differences, and push the common agenda because things change, he has emerged as ahead of the pack.
But then the situation as it is, if we're to do a SWOT on it, what would be the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to the current political situation that we have?
I think, what we have seen in the last 1 week is the culmination of a well-prepared script, or call it a very carefully designed process, first and foremost to obliterate NASA, and then let the real boys stand up for 2022. As I have said in this show and many other shows, while NASA has been groping in the dark, lacking strategy for every move they make, the Jubilee administration has been playing cards very deliberately. You know, everything they do is very well thought out. There's nothing that just comes off their heart without very clear thinking on how it's going to land. So what has happened definitely is two things. One, that political temperatures are down, and two, the last nail on the political coffin of that outfit called NASA has been done. And with that comes a number of things. You've seen in the last 1 week several things happening. The NASA principals are going to teach other Ham and Tong. Some of them are saying, I had Kalonzo Musyoka saying, we also need to meet the president. And we can't force him to meet us, but it's important that he meets us. Over the weekend, I heard James Orengo saying, this was a pact between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, and there's no reason for the other three meeting the president. So what does this mean exactly? It means this, that President Uhuru Kenyatta is well on his way to establishing himself seriously in his last term. He has managed so far to kick out the dissenting voice, the serious dissenting voice against his administration, which would have been Raila Odinga. Because if he's working with Raila Odinga now, then it means that officially there is no opposition in this country, because the other three can never be an opposition. You've seen what has happened in Senate. The leader of minority, Honorable Moses Wetangula, is on his way out from that position because the party with a majority of seats in the Senate has said, we're not going to entertain a situation in which our one-member party is going to be leading us in the Senate. I think Kenyans must understand this, that Politics is played by politicians, and politicians don't consult the wider electorate when they play the politics. They do what suits them best. And I think the whole enterprise that we have seen in the last 1.5 years has been politics purely, and it has nothing to do with mwananchi. So we do not understand why all of a sudden political temperatures are down just because two men have met and had a discussion, okay? I don't understand why people died, for instance. Do you know some that people died in the course of some struggle?
Yeah.
I saw the former Prime Minister at a funeral in Kisii trying to explain to the people why he moved that way. And you know, everybody has been left confused. You're going to see a number of things, as Milly has said. There is effectively a huge swimming pool now in Kenya, and it coincides with the rains. And you are going to see only the best political swimmers manage to get to the other side. As it is, one of the political swimmers is called Kalonzo Musyoka. That one is drowning. Moses Wetangula, that one must drown. Musalia Mudavadi will drown. And then another political outfit might emerge. We can't say for sure nucleus around who. But what we know for sure is NASA, as it was, is finally gone. What we need to start thinking seriously about is who is Raila Odinga going to support? Because if he doesn't support William Ruto, then whoever he supports might be the only person who can mount a challenge against William Ruto. But if he chooses to support William Ruto, then of course we don't even need to go for an election in 2022. We just declare William Ruto officially elected as President of the Republic of Kenya.
And save the billions.
And I have seen, and save the billions. And I have seen the newspapers already saying that there is now in progress a process to try and reunite William Ruto and Raila Odinga. And by the way, let me tell you, there are no easier people in Kenyan politics to unite like William Ruto and Raila Odinga, because they are so much like each other. They have developed themselves as serious political players. They don't owe it to anybody. They are their own political advisors. You know, even in NASA, Raila Odinga kept his cards very close to himself. Moses Wetangula, Mudavadi, and Kalonzo always knew what was going to happen on the day when it was going to happen, okay? Because he can't even trust this information to these people. So I think, honestly, that if the political process grows in the direction in which now Raila Odinga is supporting William Ruto for 2022, then you might as well say that we have a replay of 2007, except that William Ruto now is the torchbearer. And I would ask Kenyans to save the billions of shillings that we normally use in elections, so that we just go for a coronation as opposed to an election.
And we move on.
And move on.
And we move on. You've mentioned 3 key things, but among them is we've had Kalonzo Musyoka say that they don't mind meeting, they want to meet the president, but of course they wouldn't force him to meet them. In the event that meeting was to take place, in all honesty, what would be on the table for Uhuru Kenyatta to look at, to bargain with, in reason to listen to these 3?
I think that as a person with relative intelligence watching from outside, many Kenyans who are that person of some intelligence watching from outside, it has become apparent what this talks in as far as most of these NASA principles, co-principles has been.
Yeah.
And remember that even before the pact, Raila was on record saying that he smells betrayal. He kept saying he can smell betrayal. And everybody was wondering, what is this betrayal and how is it smelling, so that we can also smell it. And everybody was also talking about the alleged talks between Jubilee and some of those co-principals. who were already in discussion. And in fact, there was no secret that they were in discussion because they have also stated it in a number of occasions without saying exactly what the discussions were about, which means Kenyan thinking is that those discussions were about seats, were about being brought into the fold. Now that carpet was pulled from under them when the two key leaders went and made this pact that is allegedly for the good of the nation. It is, in my opinion, for the good of the nation. Why? Because whether we can explain it or not, political temperatures are down. People don't know what to talk about. The analysts who are being told to disappear from the media, suddenly nobody will really care because even the analysts have had to tone down. So everything has toned down. What is key is then how is this pact going to unfold? And I think that the focus of the media, for example, and of all analysts now, should be what is the workings going on around that secretariat that will be established? What shape is it going to take? Because then we will know that really this pact was for the people. And the discussions were meant to bring Kenyans together so that politics can, because politics must continue, but must continue from the background of a country that is working to remain united. So if we see that, how that pact and shapes, then we'll be able to see it. The talks that, and I saw Kalonzo speaking somewhere, I think in one of the news yesterday, and he was saying that he is the glue that sticks NASA together, and he's going nowhere, and that NASA still remains. So at one point he was saying they must also be brought to the table, they must talk. Again, he says now he's the glue and NASA must stay. And I think he's still trying to find his footing. He's still trying to find his way and be able to guide his people, whoever these people are, towards the right direction. But I think that for most of us watching this unfolding, if we are to remain focused on the interest of the people, if we are to understand why baby Pendo had to die, and if we are to understand why Musando is 6 feet under as we speak, we must remain focused on understanding how that pact is going to roll out. And my concern, even as I look at that, is that they say that the pact is generally about inclusion. It's about equality, and it's about bringing Kenyans together. We have a Gender and Equality Commission. Why is it not located there? Okay, understood that most of the commissioners there have gone home, including the CEO, so probably there's no commission to speak of, but they could appoint and have people there. We have a Cohesion Commission whose term was extended, whose work is basically to bring people together. We have already established institutions, apparently or seemingly or assumedly with systems that would be able to push this inclusion and equality agendas forward, but they're not being brought. This is not a political discussion which is likely to cause confusion in a governance structure where you're going to be sharing seats, because we have been told it is not about seats. It is about reform agenda, it is about monitoring and ensuring that the various reform agendas that need to take shape in the day, whether it is in the legislature, whether it is in the security forces, that these are conducted in a manner that people are able to see that there's change and we are coming together and we are embracing each other as a country. So why are these institutions not being brought out? Why is it that we have these two people coming to set up this secretariat? So that's what I am watching very keenly to see how that takes shape.
I'm curious to know, Mamboleo, what does this what does this say of the media agenda in this country?
Even before I get there, let me try and answer the question that you put to Milly first. You asked Milly that if one Kalonzo Musyoka were to meet Uhuru Kenyatta today, what would be on the table for these people? And today I can assure you, if I was Uhuru Kenyatta and I met Kalonzo Musyoka, I would ask him, who do you represent? Okay? Why are you here? Because there's nothing to discuss with Kalonzo Musyoka. he does not carry a constituency. Even after this pact has gone down, you can see there's no one that stands with him. So when he keeps talking about being the glue that binds NASA together, you want to ask yourself, what is this NASA that you are binding together? If you are the glue that binds nothing together, then it means you are wasting glue, or that you are not good enough glue yourself. You should be removed from our shelves.
It's Monday.
I'm just trying to understand how his chills can be at ICU.
Yes, but however, Kalonzo Musyoka is not going to be very politically correct for me this week. So this is what I think. Media. It is very unfortunate that media, which is supposed to play a very important role. In fact, if you read through Articles 34, 33, 34, 35 of the Constitution, one of the key important aspects driving the framers of that Constitution 2010 was freedom of expression. And media was seen as the hallmark of that freedom for expression. In fact, there is a raft of articles or sub-articles in the Constitution which seeks to protect media. However, the role that media plays, as important as it is, has been lopsided in its manifestation, because most media houses, as we speak today, or as of yesterday, or 2 weeks ago, or 1 year ago, seem to have been boxed into political compartments of a choice that we do not know motivated by what. Most of the media houses today have taken a political side or another, which is not supposed to be the case. And I am not afraid to say so. I have seen media houses like Citizen, media houses like Nation, like KTN, reporting or analyzing events in a way that seems to support certain positions when we expect them to be cutting right in the middle, not looking left or looking right, which is extremely unfortunate. So what I need to say about media is that do not be at the forefront of polarizing the nation alongside mediocre political persuasion, when you know very well from experience in the past, at least media houses keep archives. They know that it only takes a few minutes of a meeting in Harambee House or whichever other place, and the country will collapse into one all of a sudden, so that these political faults are no longer there, and you are not going to be so happy reporting that you are the same person yesterday who was depicting this political player as so terrible and this other one as so good, or vice versa. And people are going to be asking, but where do these people stand? And as you talk about media, Sam, talk about churches as well. You know, religious institutions, media houses, they should take a role. In fact, if I were this government, if I were these political players, I would not do any business with media houses. I would not do any businesses with religious organizations. I'll tell them, the political class is bad enough. We know that already. Religious institutions and media houses are supposed to be that balancing element within our polity. And you have failed that terribly. We need reforms in the religious sector first before you can tell us anything. Go and reform yourselves in the media before you can come and claim that high moral space from which you can tell Kenyans that, you know, this is wrong or this is not right. So media houses should start henceforth. In fact, if there are people who need reconciliation, they need restructuring, reformation, they need rehabilitation, those are media houses, especially the leading media houses in this country. Privately owned, which have clearly taken certain positions. One time I was serving as rapporteur for the Parliamentary Select Committee on IEBC in 2016. And I see a key media owner come to the committee that was dealing with IEBC issues at that time and make such a partisan presentation. I was left wondering, where is this country moving? So as much as individual persons running media houses may have their own independent political positions, They cannot use the platform of a media house to channel that particular individual political position. They should at all times try and exhibit some form of professionalism. So to especially young media reporters getting so emotional about political issues, they should learn from the suave, mature political players like Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Yesterday, they were going at each other as if the world was going to end if each of them did not die. Today, they are probably calling each other on phone and asking each other, where can we meet for coffee?
You
okay?
know,
If I may.
yes, even as you come in, Milly, for some time now, whatever has been happening in the political circle has largely been blamed on the media. And there's been this talk that it is a creation of the media. And courtesy of that handshake, it sort of leaves the media with some egg on their face. What shall it take? What handkerchief and perfume shall the media use to get this egg off our faces?
Where did the two of you wake up on this today? You're very unkind. No, I think that media is missing the opportunity. This, we were told by the two gentlemen as they shook hands, is about the people. Media is not analyzing how and trying to see how to protect how it is for the people. The focus, and that's the truth of the matter, is on politics, which has been killed. So they are struggling to bring politics back into the agenda, and yet there's no politics. So the only thing you can do is to create some concluding remarks for certain political careers, as Mamboleo has said, where you will show this politician who was saying this yesterday and saying this, and incidentally, they are not creating others. For example, Tuju, who people have been saying is a crazy person, seems to be one of the people who was ahead of the time, because Tuju often said, this NASA and this demonstration is ODM, it is nothing else. Now he's being proven right, that, and everybody is now saying it, that when ODM is not there, there is no opposition. Yet Tuju had said it earlier on, and we were not very happy with the way he stated it, or at the moment, the manner in which it came out. Now, these careers that were built, people who are right, who are reading the mood right, who are reading the politics right, and understood the politicians of the day and what their agendas were, are not being brought to the fore. The issues that would concern people, the interest to ensure that people's concerns are still brought to the table. What is this pact? What are the considerations being taken into account as you set up this secretariat? Why is it not being put in these institutions? After all, people are now saying that when you go to ODM zones, that they are saying, sasa they are serekal, you know? So if they are serekal, you can use the serekal institutions that are already in place. Why are these not being used? And media is not questioning that. Media is focusing on what is Kalonzo's reaction, what is Wetangula's reaction,
Who's meeting who?
who is meeting who,
Where and how?
And forgetting that there's a pact that is meant to bring people together. Why were we complaining the electoral reforms? Who is addressing Chebukati and his team? What are we doing about the electoral laws that were amended before the 26th election that caused a lot of problem in the country, including some of our partners coming to comment about them?
Yeah.
What is being done about that? There are so many things that we could be talking about, that we could be bringing to the fore every day, that we could be discussing as we try to ensure that Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga, the humans, I'm not talking about the seats or the positions that they hold, but the humans will be held accountable to the many, many people who have put their lives on hold for 1.5 years because of their agendas, to ensure that our interests are retained as an agenda, because it will not be the top agenda, but as an agenda on the table. Media would have helped us to do that. They could have helped us to do that, because they have that power that nobody else has in the country, or very few people have. When it comes to religious actors, I am glad that they are quiet, because they have been quiet when we needed them to talk. So let them continue to be quiet. Yes. And ask us for sadaka. That's it.
You know, you mentioned the issue of politics in church, and I remember last year there was a time I couldn't exhaust Eye on Politics without asking what is the position of the church. You asked me what's with you in the church nowadays, but in all honesty, it was very hard to find a common ground,
Yes.
a common voice that can be described as voice of reason from the church. The church in Kisumu, the church in Nairobi, the church in Kiambu could preach or give message
And you know what else?
based on their political persuasion. Moving forward, I will ask this question again, Milly Mamboleo. What is the position of the church in all of this?
I want to state categorically that the church has failed this nation, just like it has failed many other parts of the world. Why? Because the church started off as an institution which creates the yardstick for morality and good deeds. The church came across as an arbiter during times of crisis. The church presented itself as holding that enviable position of bipartisanness, which would allow the players in a crisis to look towards them for guidance. The church preached the word of God and bespoke the good things that Christians might enjoy when they follow the right path. Now the church has gotten to that point where every time there is a crisis, it descends into the arena of the crisis itself. Every time there is a dispute, it is right at the center of that dispute, or even stocking it with more firewood. And the church has lost that moral credibility to require its adherents or its followers to take a certain moral direction. So which means the church has lost its moral compass completely. And you know, it's not very many people who are capable of saying this on national television. I belong to a church, and I look at the way some of these churches conduct their businesses, and I think this is just business. So, in fact, I really wonder why the taxman cannot tax churches. I don't understand why. I don't understand why churches should not pay permits. If they're operating within Nairobi or whichever other county, let them pay single premises permits, let them pay licenses like everybody else, let them pay taxes, let them declare accounts at the end of the year. Because these are purely business enterprises and they should be dealt with as such. I doubt that there are any Kenyans right now who listen to churches. I doubt that there is any pastor who would convince you to take this direction or this one politically because you think that they have the moral agora to do so. So what do I say of churches? Let churches, as my sister Milly said, remain dead quiet as Kenyans try to find their way without them. Because when they come in, they complicate things even further, all right? So let churches sit at a corner, do some contemplation. They need to seriously meditate on how they want to present themselves in future if they want to play an important role as far as Kenyan political, socio-economic affairs are concerned. Churches, running schools. I went to a Catholic school in the name and style of Cardinal Odinga High School, Mosocho, back then. You can't hear about it. It's finished. Who is to blame? Go and find out. Churches, dispensaries, hospitals that they used to run. You can no longer depend on those kind of hospitals because when they were started off as establishments to enhance or to promote the activities of the church. You see, you need, if you're a church, you are teaching your followers the right path, and when they fall sick, you need to treat them, or you want to prevent them from getting disease, and so on and so forth. They're no longer those things. Pastors and bishops are picking money from politicians, left, right, and center, in bahashas, in they are picking money in funerals, in services, in harambes, every day.
Weddings.
Weddings everywhere. Churches can simply no longer direct this nation. They need to sit at a corner, clean up their house, and then ask us to readmit them in the national conversation when we can be sure to say these people can actually come in. Otherwise, I would advise, let churches go back to the core business for which they were established. Let them just lead by example. They don't need to get into the political arena for them to be heard. They need to shape themselves as those paragons of morality. And when we look at them, we'll say those are the yardsticks by which we should also live our lives, as opposed to them coming into the world as they have and messing it up completely. So I want to ask Kenyans as they go to church, you know, for instance, there are people who ask themselves even, why would I even tithe? Why would I pick a tenth of my earnings and take them to a place where I know it's simply going to be looted, okay? You go to any church these days, they are always preaching on the benefits of giving. Why? Because people are no longer giving freely. Because you have to coerce them to give. So churches need to reevaluate. In very strong terms, churches need to reevaluate. And I think media stations can also assist us in this. Get people who are confident enough to tell churches, go and change. Then ask the rest of us to change. As we do that, then everybody else will fall in line.
Will fall
And
in
if I
line.
may,
Yes,
there's a
Milly.
time when the religious leaders, the faith-based groups came together and they made a suggestion at the peak of the heat of things that perhaps we should amend the law, the constitution, and create positions. And there was some hue and cry with the positions. Maybe now, if they wanted to get back into the discussion, as Mamboleo is suggesting they need to do, if they wanted to get back into the discussion, they should come back and tell us what were the grounds for their calling for those amendments, because that is where the conversation is now going to. Remember, in the pact, there was that electoral reform, and of course, executive, whatever they were calling it, executive realignment. So it would be important for them to come and tell us what was their thinking then, so that it can form part of that discussion. But unfortunately, faith-based organizations, religious leaders have come across as very partisan, very divided even amongst themselves. They don't speak in one voice. They don't seem to have that underlying common agenda of bringing people together and having an harmonious nation.
They're fighting even for positions in their own churches.
In their own churches. So it becomes very difficult for them to be the moral voice.
Right.
Yeah, in a situation like this.
And very quickly, as we bring this to a close, there's one more play I would like us to look at: civil society.
Yes.
Yes, Milly? Civil society, isn't it? It has also been caught up in this entire situation, right?
Yes.
Where does this, or what becomes of civil society? What are the do's, don'ts, points to embrace to at least revive this institution called civil society? I'll begin with Mamboleo, then Milly.
Civil society has played an important role in this country's past, especially in the fight for the reintroduction of multipartism. We know that civil society fought so hard for the removal of Section 2A, 2 capital A in the Constitution, as a result of which we got back into multipartism in 1991, alongside other players, including politicians and the international community. However, some, without mincing words, there is careerism in civil society. People going there to hound for money, okay? And depending on some programs that are funded by Western countries, especially, to run agenda that is not very clear, even, it's not very clear for the opposition, it is not very clear even for government, okay? So if civil society wants to continue playing that important role that they should play, because civil society has a very important role to play. It has that voice that we need when we are running a nation on an experiment of democracy such as this one, okay? But where you have a civil society that is in bed with politicians, that is depending on this or that politician for external income, then you are going to get into a problem. Some of the names that you see in civil society, just there, basically for nothing other than money. And if a political position serves to make them earn better, they will support that political position. If on the reverse, a political position seems to deny them income, then they serve that other one which will give them income. So where is political society today? Completely confused, disintegrated, and only alive just because they are receiving some channels of funding from I don't know where. Let civil society go back to the civil society we thought it used to be.
Mm-hmm. What is their agenda? Because if they have an agenda, then they should be able to remain focused on their agenda. Their agenda is the interest of the people. Their agenda has been electoral justice and electoral reform. Their agenda has been that there are certain gains that we have in the Constitution that we must not claw back on. How are they guaranteeing where are their voices today as we speak in as far as this pact is concerned, trying to ensure and looking and analyzing the pact in view of what their agenda is and saying that this must remain on the table and we want to see how this is guaranteed as still being on the table. Let's take an example of the gender issue. When it comes to gender, we saw a few demonstrations that cabinet must reflect the gender principle and that the next appointment should follow a certain angle. But what is really the intention of two-thirds? To have women representation in all political agendas. When we had, for example, the opposition, there was a long protracted conversation with the minority side discussing who was going to represent them in the Parliamentary Service Commission, where they had names of certain women and men. Where was the voices of the gender? Talking about protecting and ensuring that gender is supported in that agenda. They were nowhere to be had because the interest is, and that is where I would agree with Mamboleo, that people are seated back and talking only about appointments and jobs. And that is where the interest lies. Is it about increasing women's space in all political agendas? Because women will be there, both in government and on the minority side. How do you ensure that their space is protected on both sides? We did not hear them then. That is just one component of civil society agendas that we know. Electoral justice, where are they now? We can't hear them talking. We have not heard them insisting that part of that pact, because I read that pact very carefully, and it said that institutional reform has been ongoing for a long time to no end. What is civil society's reaction to that? Because they were calling for continued institutional reform. They were calling for continued agenda. How are they raising concerns about that to ensure? But it went on to say that, yes, they must, but the key thing would be to have a political setting that allows for more space. How are they ensuring that that institutional reform agenda will still remain? Because they had done analysis, given ELOG was split and had two different reports they presented, but they had analysis as to how they thought the institution presented itself during that process and what needs to be done. So again, just like media, we are saying that people are missing the point and being led by the nose by a political agenda of the day, led by politicians. Yet we know that right now, all politicians, almost all, are confused because the pact has left them. I'm glad that I had the nominated member of parliament in the National Assembly from the Jubilee side, I forget his name, saying that he's confused. He admitted. He said he's confused because he has been insulting Raila. Now he has to say nice things and he doesn't know how to say it. So you can imagine that is the political leadership that we have now, and we follow that and forget our agendas. Yes.
Thank you so much for coming. And before I let you go, I think this discussion has opened up areas that need to be discussed in a bid to set the agenda on the way forward, because it goes beyond a handshake. There are certain issues that need to be looked into critically so that we are able to grow this country forward. I mean, when the executive rallied behind titles like His Excellency, the legislature had Honorable, judiciary had Lord, Lordship, learned friends. The media too was titled, and we were called esteemed members of the Fourth Estate. When you look into the definition of that word esteem, it carries respect and admiration. Why was that? Because we were not political accessories, we were political influencers. But with time, we went to bed with a political class, and our position dwindled from political influencers to political accessories. And the thing about an accessory is that you can put it on and off anytime. Ask the ladies, they'll tell you, today they're having the gold chain, tomorrow they want the pearls, the following day it's silver. You can be put on and off anytime. And just to bring the conversation closer, all right? We were the main chick. Then at some point we became the side chick. And now the side chick is throwing the tantrums of the main chick. How does that happen? I'm just using a youthful illustration. What am I saying? We need to get our houses in order. I'm looking at civil society, I'm looking at the church, and I'm looking at the media. We are no longer influencers, but accessories to political agenda in this country. And it is time we reformed and take our position, rightfully so, to be known as esteemed members of the Fourth Estate. That is my humble submission this morning. Thank you for watching the show. Safina Cheng is coming up next with Family Check. That has been Eye on Politics. My name is Samuel Njoroge. Good morning.